For me, I believe trigger press is tomorrow's problem, not today's. I believe this is a big contributing factor to why officers perform the way they do, and it's because they are taught trigger press, a methodical, skillful manipulation of that trigger to get a better result on target. The problem is, doesn't correlate over to real life for the most part of what we're seeing for shootings. Today, we're going to be covering some foundational skills under the shooting pillar. One thing that I want to establish first is a common understanding of what we're looking to really accomplish. I'm going to make the assumption right off the bat that nobody would disagree with me that if I told you I could make you shoot faster and more accurate, that would be a negative thing, right? So if we subscribe to that, what we need to now define is how we look at what that bar is and how we assess our standards and qualifications and what we're looking at. When I look at training, the goal for me is to design a program that's going to assist me in developing skill. I want to do this because I don't know what skill or the level of skill that I'm going to need to be called upon to execute at any given day in the course of our duties. It could be traditionally low level, or it could be a high level threat of a committed adversary. Regardless, I need to make sure I have that skill level to be able to execute to do my job. So when I look at training, we have to design training in a manner that's going to allow us to build a surplus of skill. All right, this is extremely important, and we need to change the way we are looking at this methodology of how we go about that. We need to step out of the result-oriented training, and we need to step into process-oriented training. Process-oriented training, when you are training, regardless of what is happening, it's going to assist you in developing awareness and pay attention to the fine details, the minutiae of what's actually happening in the firing sequence. When we train like that, which is process-oriented, regardless of whether the rounds are bad or not, we are learning from that. Even when it's a negative round or a bad round that we're shooting, I'm able to extrapolate information from that so that I can make that corrective measure through purposeful training to get rid of that behavior. When you focus on result-based training, which is like qualifications, the only metric of success is the target, whether it's pass or fail, right? That is absence of information and awareness, and this is going to lead you quickly to a plateau and a low level amount of skill, which is not going to be good for you to do your job, and what we're currently seeing across the board in law enforcement. Result-based training with low level of skill, and it results in a poor execution of our job. When I look at training, I equate it to like a bank account, your checking account. I want to set up training that's going to constantly be depositing money into that bank account. The more that I do purposeful training, the more money that I'll be putting in that account. When real life happens and whatever that problem is, I'm able to cash that check. Whether it's a 25-cent problem or a $20 problem, I need to make sure I have the funds in the account to be able to solve that problem. What I'm currently seeing across law enforcement now is that we have a lot of officers with 25-cent bank accounts, and they're running into low-level $2 problems, and although they're simple to solve, they lack the funds to be able to cash that check. We need to make sure we're training appropriately. Also, we need to understand, and this is a big problem for law enforcement, we need to separate training from real life. Real life execution will be whatever it needs to be to get that job done. Training should be designed to be harder. It should be rigorous, it should be painful, you should be making lots of mistakes. During those mistakes, if we're applying a process-oriented training strategy, we'll be identifying these micro deficiencies, being aware of what they are and how they're happening in the shooting sequence, so therefore we can correct those behaviors. As we correct those behaviors over and over, we'll now be building skill and depositing money into our account, so when a more complex problem arises, we'll be able to execute on demand. In this training program, I'm going to be asking you to do things that are uncomfortable, not uncontrolled. There's a difference. Uncomfortable is I'm pushing myself at a speed that I'm not currently capable of doing, but it's at a pace where I can actually still process what is going on. Uncontrolled is where I'm shooting at a pace where it is so far beyond my capability, where I'm not able to tie cause and effect, and you're gonna hear me say this a bunch, to what actually was the contributing factor to that mistake. If we're training uncontrolled, we are wasting ammo, we are wasting time. If we're training uncomfortable and we have the ability to tie cause and effect to what is happening, both positive and negative, we are building skill, right? That is depositing money into our banking account. That's where we want to live. Remember, there's no such thing as advanced shooting. There's only perfect execution of the fundamentals. In this course, there's going to be no fancy tricks. There's going to be no crazy techniques that's going to lead you to the homeland, right? It's going to take hard work and dedication. You have to be committed to this process that I'm going to outline for you today or over these couple days of filming, and then go work on it. And then pay attention to the finer points that we're going to cover today. We'll introduce a bunch of different problems that we commonly see as I teach, and we'll talk about what are usually contributing factors to them. Nonetheless, pay attention to the core principles that we'll outline today and that will lead you to success. Just make sure that you understand that this does take a level of commitment. So my challenge to you as law enforcement officers is to be more committed, raise the standard, embrace the process. Yes, it will suck, but this is what is needed for our profession to elevate. All right, guys. So I'm going to get off my rant right there, and we're going to actually start teaching some stuff. So you don't have to have been in a ton of gunfights to make this correlation here, right? But if you've watched a few body camera footage or you've seen a ton of body cam footage, I think we'll all agree that we're seeing officers execute very aggressive shooting. The problem is they don't actually possess the capability to shoot at that level of aggression and maintain accountability. So the first thing we're going to work on, which I'm a big proponent of, is we are going to work on learning how to build a durable and consistent grip, all right? With that, we have to remove the trigger press from this process, all right? Inherently, the way law enforcement and military personnel are trained, we are trained to add in that methodical trigger press too early. For me, I believe trigger press is tomorrow's problem, not today's. I believe this is a big contributing factor to why officers perform the way they do, and it's because they are taught trigger press, a methodical, skillful manipulation of that trigger to get a better result on target. The problem is, doesn't correlate over to real life for the most part in what we're seeing for shootings. So what they did do by that is they've underdeveloped their grips, and grip is going to be one of the core foundational skills that we need to do. But like I said, we can't develop grip if we're going to press the trigger nice and gingerly. So I need us to smash on those triggers very aggressively. This is going to be difficult, but it's going to teach you a ton about your grip. All right, so this drill that we're going to look at is called trigger control at speed. Now, when I'm pressing this trigger, I'm going to be smashing it. I'm going to put it, for this demonstration, right? I'm going to put it as far as I can outside the trigger guard. All right, this is the farthest I can get my finger from the trigger, and this is going to be the most egregious press that I can think of to execute on demand. So this is a very realistic situation that law enforcement constantly finds themselves in, right? Pointing a gun at a potential threat, but the threat does not meet the rules of engagement yet. So we don't want to have our trigger finger on the trigger because that would be dangerous, but we still want to be ready to act when that threat does present what is appropriate for us to use deadly force. So although this is, like I said, a great way to test a durable, consistent grip, as we're going to dive into, it's also a very realistic application for law enforcement. All right, but right now we're just going to focus on developing shooting skill. Like I said prior, we need to separate training and actual reality sometimes, and we need to just focus on developing skill and let real life be whatever real life be. We'll just have enough skill hopefully developed that whatever real life is, we can meet that level of skill. All right, so I'll rack the gun. There's obviously it's empty. This is done dry fire. You'll notice that there's a black reference mark paster on the target. Right now, I just want you to point your red dot at that black visual stimulus. That black reference mark there is for you to attach your eyes to and overlay the gun. We'll dive a little bit more into that, but right now, all I really need you to pay attention to is to put your dot on that. And then I want you to smash the trigger extremely hard as you can. And then I want you to pay attention to what that dot does, all right? So we'll do a couple incorrect here, right? I want you to see the behavior of this gun. This is most likely what I see from a lot of law enforcement shooters. They are going to smash on this trigger. Since that manipulation of the trigger is uncomfortable for them and foreign, they are going to most likely induce some type of subconscious response from their grip with pressures, and they're gonna start influencing the gun, all right? So they're gonna aim, you'll aim in, and then this would be what most likely I see. They'll just do something like that, right? They smash on the trigger real hard, and you can see the nose for a right-handed shooter just kind of dumps low left. What's that from is your firing hand pressure change, right? So I felt stressed. I don't press the trigger in this manner often, and now I'm asked to do it, and I don't possess the discipline to maintain a consistent grip around this pistol. And you're gonna see that's what shooting really comes down to a lot. And you're gonna see with all the principles that I outlined, it comes down to discipline, right? We have to have the ability to maintain whatever we started it with, for better or worse, right? And we'll dive deeper into that later on in the series, right? But whatever I start with in my grip, I need to maintain that regardless. So what I'm looking for from the feedback from the red dot on the black pacer is that it just goes off and the dot just kind of like wobbles a little bit on the black pacer, but it shouldn't be going anywhere outside of that. You can start off around 4 or 5 yards, all right, to make this work for you. All right, so same thing, I'm gonna come out and I'll smash on that trigger. That dot had a little bit of leftward movement, so that's telling me that I had a slight little bit of pressure changing in my hand, all right? So we'll clean that up. That looked good. That looked good, right? So what you're gonna see, and what you should be tying cause and effect to every type of behavior. And since there's no recoil going on, right, we'll be more likely to pick up on it. So here'll be some common problems that you'll see, right? I'm gonna press the trigger real aggressive, and I feel like I need to do extra. I need to help the gun. You actually need to do nothing, right? But a lot of times you'll see guys, they're like, man, this thing's gonna go and I need to try to keep it level, right? And they'll smash the trigger and they'll push on it like that, right? These are things that we're gonna dive into when we talk about grip shortly, but right now I just want you playing with the trigger control at speed to get some type of understanding on how to press the trigger, all right? A lot of this training is gonna be exploratory. This is gonna require you to play with stuff, embrace the process, and start to solve your own problems, all right? I'm not gonna be there with you. Other instructors are not gonna be there with you throughout your whole training. And you need to start being able to learn how to tie cause and effect and then dissecting these little micro problems with a deeper understanding of what's happening, right? So like this first drill is going to start that process for us. So I'm purposely leaving out a lot of components right now for you because I want you to start to build that process of tying cause and effect to be able to see if you can start picking up on where these pitfalls are coming from with your shooting, right? Some key areas to pay attention to is structure in the wrist changing, pressure in the hand changing, right? Either hand, support hand or shooting hand. Structure from the body, right? If I get stressed out and I start to push on the gun, right? From my arms, from my shoulders, all of that will cause problems to make the gun react different, right? What we're looking to do is to get the gun to behave the same way every time, regardless of the manner we're shooting, whether it's aggressive or it's more conservative, it does not matter. The gun should behave the same, right? You're gonna hear this term a lot. We are trying to get the gun to behave in a predictable manner. This will tie back in later on to why we want that, but right now, that's all I really need you to understand is I want you to step up. I want you to aim the gun at whatever, a light switch. I prefer something small, whatever you have, and start really smashing on that trigger and start assessing, what are you seeing? What are you feeling? What did I feel my firing hand do? What did I feel my support hand do? What did I feel the structure in my wrists do? Either or. What did I feel the tension from my body do, right? We also want to try to maintain a relaxed posture, right? A relaxed structure. So it's not so relaxed that it's like a wet noodle, but it's not so tense where we're going to be more likely to transfer it into the gun, right? All the tension, if you're feeling tight in your biceps and your shoulders are real high, all of that tension has a high probability to transferring into gun. And I'm not going to say it always does. There's plenty of great shooters that shoot with more tension and are able to be successful. What I am saying is that from my training and experience and the people that I've trained across the country, most people that shoot like that are unable to maintain that level of tension consistently, and they usually end up transferring it into the gun, regardless, with this being a process-oriented type of program, you will find what the appropriate amount of tension is for you based on understanding what the behavior of the gun should be, right? So, like I said, we know that we want the gun, when I smash on that trigger, to just wobble a little bit on the black paster. If you're actually pressing the trigger very aggressively and you get that behavior, you can start to check a box as, okay, I'm onto something. This is probably the appropriate amount of tension and pressure and consistency and durability across this platform right now. As we start to layer more skills and I ask more of you, you're gonna see that maybe there's gonna have to be some tweaks to that and some refinements as we go out throughout the process. So I'll do a couple more demonstrations for you guys so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Some things I see with guys that have really big fingers. I have small hands. Sometimes guys trigger finger are really far, and when they try to smash in from here, they start to push on the frame, right? That's never going to be conducive for this drill. So if you have to, like if you have really big hands, just float your trigger finger outside of the gun and just smash in like that. All right, so I'll do some like that so you can kind of see if you had bigger hands. I just want you to isolate the grip and then just smash on the trigger. All right, so those are looking good. Dots literally just staying right in the black paster. Depending on the gun that you're shooting, the PDP, the way the trigger mechanism works, the dot pretty much just stays right on there. With Glocks, it'll still stay on there, but it just vibrates more due to that mechanism. All right, so if you're seeing like some crazy vibration, but it's not shooting any particular direction, that's really what I'm worried about. If it's just wobbling, that's fine. All right, if it starts shooting different directions, well, then we know that we need to start tying cause and effect, and we need to start looking at the big culprits, right? Firing hand, support hand, shoulder tension, structure in the wrist. These are the things that are gonna start causing that gun to deviate, right? I think we all would agree, since the gun is not firing, that if the gun moves off there, clearly we are the only contributing factor that could have did that, right? So if we're doing that without recoil, most likely once we add recoil to it, we're going to probably exacerbate that behavior, right? It's going to be even worse. It'll be magnified. So this is a great foundational drill just to start that, right? Also, it's phenomenal for how what we see from historical data of what law enforcement officers are finding themselves in, being forced to be able to shoot or press the trigger very aggressively, right, and maintain accountability. The problem that we have now is that they're pressing the trigger very aggressively. They're just unable to maintain accountability. This is the first building block that we're going to do to start building in that accountability and dialing back our shooting it. When we're looking at these rounds going off, right, this is a laser trainer here to help you see. Obviously, there's an offset from what I'm seeing and when the laser's coming out, right? I don't want you equating for your height over bore. I just want you putting your red dot on here. If, depending on your zero, if the rounds are printing a little bit low, not worried about that. I just want you to pay attention to the feedback as we get further on. But right now we're not shooting rounds, so you don't have to worry about it. But if this laser represented your dot, right, it should just kind of wobble like some type of form inside this black paster. If we're seeing the dot go like this, starts there and it starts to streak down, that's most likely pressure changes from your firing hand, right? If you see the dot start to go up like this, that's most likely you are healing into the gun. You are pushing on your shoulders, or you are changing structures in your wrist. Same thing if the dot starts to shoot to the right, if you're a right-handed shooter, that is a pressure change, right, in your support hand. And what happens here is that you are aligned, everything is set, you're aligned, right, everything's looking good, the dot's sitting in there, and then when you go to press the trigger, that makes you feel uncomfortable, right, at that speed, and then you push the gun, right? You influence the gun. You change the way you are solidifying that grip while you are pressing the trigger. And this is why it's really difficult to see when you're in the beginning, when you're firing live rounds, because the recoil masks that behavior, right? So this is a great way to get rid of recoil, save ammo, and have a better idea of what's actually happening with the gun. But whether you have a laser trainer or not, it's irrelevant. I probably prefer you use your regular gun and just pay attention to the dot, because the feedback from that actual gun and the weight of it is going to make a little bit more sense. It's going to tie apples to apples better, right? So we really just want to pay attention to what's happening in that feedback and just smash. All right. So once that's looking good, you're like, yep, I feel pretty comfortable like that. I'm able to hold the gun in a manner that's durable and consistent. I'm able to smash on the trigger really aggressively, and I get minimal to no movement from my dot. All right. We're now going to shift gears a little bit. All right. We're now going to do a one-shot return. All right. So what I'm looking for here is how the gun returns back. And what we're building up to, and I'll just give you a little precursor, is we are developing the skill to be able to shoot in a predictive manner. Predictive shooting is your ability to shoot faster than your brain can process and still maintain 100% accountability. This is primarily used as a training strategy. All right, we're going to dive deeper into it. I don't want to lose you on it, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper. I just want you to understand what we are starting to build towards, because this is a phenomenal training strategy. Doesn't mean you need to engage targets or people in this manner, but if you are able to do that, anything realistic is going to seem very easy and under controlled. All right, so one-shot return, one-shot return. So now I'm going to aim in at the target. I'm going to fire a round. Gun's going to recoil a particular way. And then all I'm paying attention to is, boom, how does it return? The gun should return precisely back to that paster. Now, there's not going to be a bullet to associate with that return yet. It's going to have to be me tying cause and effect and being aware of what's going on. So now we need to talk about some aiming stuff, all right? Your vision, your visual focus should be anchored on this black pacer. This is why I have that there. It's a small black pacer because that is how refined I want you to be looking at stuff. So as we progress throughout this program and the black pacers go away and I'm just looking at a target, I need to be able to make my own small spots like this black pacer rapidly, quickly to drive the gun to that spot. We'll dive more into it later. Right now, I just want you to understand that this is a visual marker for you to anchor your vision to. You are not looking at your red dot. You are just putting your vision here, overlaying your dot. You are aware of what the dot's behavior is doing, but your eyes and your focus is on the black paster. When I fire the one round, the gun will recoil. I'm not concerned where the round goes. Yes, the round should be right around the black paster. But regardless, this particular evolution, we are going to separate that shooting, right? So I could press on the trigger real egregious, push on the gun. The round could go low left, but then it recoils and then it lands precisely. So it tells me two things, right? Yep, I totally fucked up the execution of that round, but I maintained good visual discipline and the gun returned precisely back. So our eyes are what's going to give us the precision for the gun to return. Your grip, your structure, right? That's going to give us the gross return. But if I want precision, that's where the visual acuity and anchoring comes in. That's going to give me that precision to come back. All right. I equate this to basically what we've been doing our whole life with the hand-eye coordination. We've all used computers before, right? When you're on your computer and you're dragging the mouse over to an icon, right? You're not staring at the mouse cursor and going over to it. You just look at the icon, you whip the mouse over, and what do you know? It lands pretty much right on it. We are tapping into that same type of behavior with firearms, all right? And we have to be extremely critical of what we are seeing. This is probably the most difficult component of shooting, and we will dive into this definitely deeper. But just right now, all I need you to know is I want you to lock and anchor your vision to here. No matter what happens with the gun, I don't care what the gun does, keep your eyes here and then assess how the gun returns. All right? So I'll demonstrate this real quick for you. just start off at 5 yards, guys. As the program goes, we'll progress way farther back, 25 yards or so, maybe more. But right now, five yards is plenty good while we start to figure this stuff out. All right, so there's only going to be one shot. All right, I'm going to bring my trigger finger back into making contact with the blade. All right, I want to remove some of the grip development stuff right now because I really want to pay attention to just return, right? Sometimes we have to separate different components, let some things go to work on something else, and then we'll bring them back together, right? So right now we're just isolating the return of the gun and understanding how to keep consistent, durable grip pressures while we're pressing the trigger, and then understanding the visual anchoring and connection to a small spot, what that has to look like to get that gun to be extremely precise, all right? It'll look like this. So I'm back in on the trigger, not doing the crazy trigger press right now. I'm just letting it go, and then I'll just press and I'll assess the return. All right, so it returned back. It was a little bit slow, right? Because I just didn't get off the trigger enough. I'm talking to you and forgetting what to do. If you look at the round, right? The round slightly below the paster, right? Not worried about that. I'm worried about the return. The round's below the paster because I'm holding on the black paster, and there's a slight offset here at 5 yards. I'm not concerned about that. All right, that's not a shooting problem. That's a height over bore issue. All right, so we'll do that again, and I'll get off that trigger faster to get that thing to return quicker. There we go. All right, so you can see I'm just smacking the trigger. I'm not coming outside, but I'm smacking the trigger, and then I'm just assessing how that gun returns, right? You can see that the grouping is right there, right below the black paster. That's consistent with my 0 on this pistol. When I'm assessing the return, the thing that I'm paying attention to is just as quickly as the gun leaves that black paster, it should return back to that paster, all right? So if it whips out, but then gingerly comes back, well, there's something going on there, right? And there's several contributing factors. It could be some type of visual expansion in your eyes, right? Where you're starting to look all over the place, you're starting to expand your vision. It could be some type of physical tension that you've now clamped down on your hands and you're slowing that gun back from returning. There could be several things here, right? But this is what you need to start paying attention to and start tying cause and effect. When I look at the paster and the gun leaves it, it should whip right back to it and it should be precise, all right? You'll execute this several times in your training, or as long as it takes you to figure that out, and then we'll start to layer it even more. The key thing is to understand what we are looking to get. The behavior from the gun is that when the dot leaves the black paster, it comes back as quick as it left, and it lands as precise as it started. All right, guys, so now we're gonna get into our next layer. Now, any of these particular stages that we just outlined for you, this might take you a day of working on, right? That trigger control at speed drill that I do, that we were doing dry with no ammo, I do that every day for maintenance, right? All of this stuff requires you to put an immense amount of work to refine and develop and also maintain, because shooting skill is extremely perishable, right? So trigger control at speed is a staple in my dry fire program. I don't do it much on the live range, but I do a ton of it in dry fire, okay? So work on that. It may take you a week to figure that out. That's fine. It does not matter. Then, once we're getting a good feel of how to create a good durable grip, then we're gonna start, hey man, can I get this gun to return precisely and come back as quick as it left, which is that one-shot return drill. Once that's looking good, we're gonna add another layer to it, all right? This drill is, we call 50-50s, and basically it is a little modification to the Ben Stoker doubles drill, which we will work up to. But I find that this little interim iteration in here helps people really understand what's going on in the gun. So the way this is gonna work, because the goal, like I said before, is to build up to predictive shooting, is, hey, cool, I'm doing everything right. I'm pressing the trigger, the bullet's going where, I'm pressing the trigger aggressively, the grip is durable and consistent, my vision is anchored precisely, gun is returning back, great. All of that is looking good. But now we need to push ourselves and start layering and ask us to do more together. So now we're going to start merging all this stuff together, giving yourself more tasks to see if you actually have this skill currently figured out. All right. So this will be the 50-50. So what I do is I just remove the magazine. I will have one round in the gun. All right. I will bring my trigger finger back into the trigger guard. I will smash on the trigger twice. All right, I am not worried about trigger manipulation. I will let you know at what point you should be worried about it, but just a little hint. For me personally, and what I think is beneficial for law enforcement, when we are training, we should be smashing on the triggers, all right? Nobody has ever had a problem once they've learned how to smash on a trigger when I allow them to say, hey man, you can press it nicer, any which way you want, however you feel, prep, press, slow roll through. No one's ever had a problem figuring that out. So if you can learn it the hard way, going backwards is easy. The problem is when you learn it doing only slow and methodical, you are unable to press it very aggressively because you've hurt yourself with grip development because of that. So when we get to some more complex stuff, I'll allow you to have a little bit of freedom in the way you manipulate the trigger. Nonetheless, it shouldn't be slowing down our shooting, but we'll talk about that later on. Right now, we're going to be smashing triggers still, all right? So I'm going to be 5 yards from this target, and I'm going to do the 50-50. So I'll be smashing on, I'll be aimed in, not drawing, just aimed in. I'll be smashing on the trigger twice. And obviously the first round will go off. I'm paying attention to the return of the gun and what happens on the return, because there'll be a dead, or not a dead trigger, but there'll be no round going off. So it'll be round, recoil, gun returns. I'm paying attention to that return. And then simultaneously, I'm pressing the trigger and paying attention to what that dot behavior does when the trigger goes off. Now, we have to talk about a little bit of aiming strategies here right now. This is getting into that predictive shooting, right? So predictive shooting, as I mentioned before, is I'm pressing the trigger knowing that my dot is not on my intended point of aim, point of impact, but knowing it will be if I don't change anything. All right, it's going to sound like wizardry. It's okay. Trust me, embrace the process. This does work if you execute it, and this will teach you how to develop a very high level of skill in shooting. All right, so when I'm aimed in here, I'm pressing the trigger twice, regardless of what the dot is telling me. All right, now we should be aware of what the dot is doing, and the reason why I say that is I don't want you waiting for the dot to return to give you permission to press the trigger. I just want you pressing the trigger twice regardless, and you should see some type of feedback from the dot, whether it's over here, back in the paster, when that trigger is breaking, all right? And since like I said, there's no round, it should be very apparent of what happens, all right? So the first one I'm gonna do is incorrect. This is incorrect. I don't want you to do this. This is what I see when people normally do this drill. This is not correct. You are wasting your time, all right? So I'll aim in, and then watch what I do here, guys. Incorrect. All right, so that was a little dramatic, right? But what you saw there was I aimed in, I shot the round, the gun recoiled, it returned precisely, so all of that was good, and then I waited for the dot to settle, and then I pressed the trigger again, and the dot stayed right there, and everything was great. The only problem is I didn't shoot predictively, right? So I'm losing a major component of this drill to get us to shoot faster, but still maintain accountability. This is very difficult, but this is important to get you to understand this so you can start to develop that skill so you can employ this weapon very fast and aggressive and still maintain 100% accountability with surgical accuracy. So now I'll do it correct for you guys. All right? You should not hear the reset of the trigger. That's how fast I'm pressing this trigger at, this 5 yard distance. All right, do that again. That looked okay. It was like the bottom of the paster a little bit. Good. Remember, I'm paying attention to the return. The rounds are obviously going to be there. All right, so all that's really happening here, like I said, is I'm judging the return, right? All I did was right here is just shoot a couple rounds aimed at the black paster. All the information, all the value was in all the stuff that's not scoreable on this target, right? That's a given. I'm standing 5 yards aimed at a black paster. Yeah, like nobody's impressed. That doesn't matter. What does matter is all the information that you guys couldn't see on the camera that you will see as the end user when you're doing this training. And what I was looking for was, did that dot leave as fast as it, did it return as fast as it left? And how precisely did it return? And then when I felt that trigger go off, what was the behavior of that dot? So it should have just quickly left, quickly returned, the trigger's breaking, and the dot's just staying right there. All right, guys, so once you're getting comfortable with those 50-50s, then I want you to move on to the doubles process that Ben Stoger and Kwanzaa Kim subscribe. If you want, check those guys out. There's lots of excellent books. I am going to change a little bit of what they're doing, though, here for you guys, because I believe it's important. They will have you draw the gun and then execute. I do not want you drawing the gun, all right? I want you figuring out what right looks like here first, because this is going to heavily play a huge component into us developing our index, right? Over-developing an index to have the gun go wherever we look is extremely important for law enforcement, all right? We need that gun to land right on that subject immediately and where we need the bullets to go. It can't be all over the place and then we have to make corrections. We don't have that time because we're usually reactive, right? We're reacting to some type of stimulus. To do that and develop a good index, I need to understand what I'm trying to create first. So to just not make the process go any longer than it has to, I find that it goes a lot faster if we just figure out what right here looks like, and then we can get into the draw once we know exactly what our pressures and our vision need to look like isolated. Then we can add that next layer of drawing the gun and making sure we are able to draw the gun, bleed off the tension, have the dot stop, press the trigger, do all those things that we're doing here. We're just removing this component, all right? And this will definitely expedite your learning curve with this. So now we're gonna go into the doubles. We're 5 yards from the target, not very far, right? What I'm looking for is really at this distance, I'm looking to shoot the gun as fast as I can possibly pull the trigger for the most part. And I'm looking to really keep like all the rounds within like a quarter or so size group, all right? Maybe a silver dollar, right? We'll see what happens. But regardless, what I want is I want to run this gun as hard as I can, and I'm not waiting for the gun to return. So it's one sight picture, and I'm pressing the rounds twice, maintaining good visual anchoring to the black pasters, and doing everything I can to not change any structure or pressures in the shooting process. All right, so it'll look like this. If we have some mistakes, we'll talk about that. Talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever I see. Pay attention to the process, and then I want you guys to ask yourself, what did I see and what did I feel? So it'll look like this, all right? All right. Shot fairly aggressive. I'll pick that up a little bit, right? I want you to look at what we have here. We've got 2 rounds basically in themselves. It's only 5 yards, right? But that was perfect execution of what I was looking for at 5 yards. Now, after I fire that sequence, I'm going to start to ask myself, what did I see? What did I feel? What did I feel from my grip? What did I see from my vision? What information was the gun giving me? Both positive and negative, right? If there's a mistake, I want to start tying that mistake and cause an effect to that, because that's going to give me information later on in my shooting journey about shot calling, right? You'll start tying correct behavior and incorrect behavior from feedback from the gun, and that will give you instantaneous information about where that round went. That's very important for us when we're using this gun, whether it's competition or real life, to know exactly where that round went, right? It's called shot calling. It's referred to as shot calling, all right? This process will help you with your shot calling as you're tying cause and effect if you're paying attention to the process. If you're just blindly clacking off 2 rounds and going through the motions, then yeah, man, like you're not going to get anything out of this. We have to tie cause and effect. We have to be processing what's going on in our hands, what's going on in our body, what's the structure look like, and what's my visual anchoring feel like, and how does that gun return? All right. We'll add all of that together, both positives and negatives, and over time, you will start to develop a really durable, consistent grip and start to really understand how to refine that visual connection to a small spot.